This is Lorena with Synergy Behavior Solutions. I'm doing another live on my deck with my other dog. This is Summer. He is a 50% St. Bernard, 50% 14 million other things. Yes, he is a beautiful dog. And today I'm going to be talking about loose leash walking. So polite leash manners are, I think, nice. Probably one of the most common struggles that dog owners have is that their dogs pull on leash. And honestly, a dog pulling on leash isn't just a nuisance. It doesn't just make walks unpleasant for us. It can be physically damaging to our bodies. It can be physically damaging to our dogs. And it actually is one of the core relationship busters, I think, for the average dog and person, because taking our dogs for a walk is one of the reasons we get a dog. We want to be able to go for walks and enjoy them. And maybe you are the person who has that friend that has the really easy chill dog that they've never had to train and walks nicely next to them and lumbers along like not a care in the world, and then maybe your dog pulls like a freight train. And you can't seem to get them to do anything. Maybe they don't take treats on walks, maybe they won't pay attention to you, they won't respond to cues, and maybe you've tried everything. Usually when people say that they've tried everything, they're talking about different types of gear or tools that are supposed to punish or in some way teach our dogs not to pull. So, massive secret I'm about to share with you is that I actually want to see some comments. Hey, say hi if you're here. Hi, Julia. Thanks for joining us. And massive secret, there is no tool that can teach your dog to loose leash walk, and there is no tool that can teach them to pull. I know, wild, right? There's lots of myths around harnesses encouraging dogs to pull. There's lots of stuff about anti-pull harnesses. There's lots of stuff about how prong collars can punish our dogs for pulling and teach them to loose leash walk, and that is not the case. So, really quick, if you missed my live this past Tuesday, just a couple days ago, please go back and watch that. I do go a little bit more into depth on gear and what you should be walking your dog on, regardless of whether or not your dog is reactive. I will say, though, that 99% of the time, I recommend and encourage a harness that has a front and a back clip, and ideally a relatively versatile leash such as this one that can be either a regular 6-foot lead or can be clipped to both the back and the front so that you have maximum control and comfort for your dog. That's a really important component that people are missing. And I want to say a couple of things before I jump into why that's the case. So we're not using any aversive tools. We're not using anything that cause our dogs pain or discomfort. We are just thinking about leashes and harnesses and the gear that we walk our dogs in as more like a way to, as a safety device, and not a steering wheel. It's not how we get our dogs to do things. This is just to keep our dogs from running into traffic. So, that said, I want to talk a little bit about what loose leash walking is and is not. So, when I talk about loose leash walking, I am not talking about asking our dogs to be in some kind of formal competition obedience heel. There is no reason for your dog to be in a perfect heel during your entire walk, and by that I mean glued to your side, staring up at you rigid. That is not a fun walk for your dog, and it is not enriching, and it doesn't meet the goals of a walk, and likely will just increase the stress. And so the average person who does train a formal heel, and I would say the vast majority of pet owners don't necessarily need one, and if that's the case, if that is something that you enjoy, then it's something that maybe you train for 30 seconds or so in order to pass somebody on a trail or to keep your dog close in a situation where you want their attention. Loose leash walking is just, oh, good boy, he had to go potty. It's just a nice smile in the leash. Your dog is walking close to you within a particular bubble or proximity zone that you have established, and your dog is relaxed and your dog is connected to you. So a walk should look something more like your dog is sniffing, your dog is moving in a fluid way, your dog is relaxed, your dog knows that you exist on the other end of the leash, and your dog can respond to basic cues. When I observe a lot of people walking with their dogs, and often when I see people walking with their dogs and getting pulled, there's a few different things that are also happening at the same time. The dog is demonstrating a lot of behaviors that indicate that the dog is like over-aroused, which can mean a million different things, but what it really means is that the dog is experiencing too much sensory input that it cannot cope with. And so your dog is not calm. So let's just all agree that when our dogs pull, they are not demonstrating calmness. So I will say that one of the things about loose leash walking that people don't think about is how difficult of a skill it actually is for our dogs. Humans really like to play this game called walk in a straight line and ignore everything interesting. And we expect our dogs to play it from a very young age, as if they're somehow hardwired. You want to be in the camera? Yeah. As if they're somehow hardwired to do this ridiculous behavior that is honestly not even in their repertoire of how they move and interact in the world. Dogs don't walk in a straight line, and they certainly don't approach other dogs or humans in a straight line if they have anything to say about it. So, in terms of polite manners. So, if we want our dogs to perform this behavior that is outside the repertoire of what they're born with, we have to teach them the components and the essential skills, the foundational skills, before we take those out into the world. It might be shocking, but I do not train my dogs to loose leash walk by putting them on leash and taking them for a walk. I train my dogs to loose leash walk at home, and we're always working on the essential concepts and skills that are required for a loose leash walk. The 3 skills that I think are essential, I could probably give you a list of 18 different skills, but the 3 that I think are essential that you want to be working on if you have a dog that pulls, one is focus. And so when I say that, loose leash walking is essentially just lots and lots of auto check-ins. Loose leash walking is your dog being close enough to you and connected enough to you to acknowledge that you exist and to have a conversation with you about the environment. What I mean by that is things happen in the environment that increase our dog's level of stress and cortisol. And their ability to cope with that and to continue on with their walk is what determines whether or not they get those over-aroused behaviors and start to pull. So if we can have a conversation with our dogs like, yep, that car just drove by, I see it, cool, let's keep going. Yes, that dog is barking at you across the street, it's cool, let's keep going. These kinds of conversations are how we build a dog that's able to just process what's happening in the environment and then carry on and self-regulate. So focus on you is one. The next one is value in proximity. So when we think about what drives behavior, we have to think about all organisms are either seeking things that are pleasurable, things they want or need, or they are trying to avoid things that are painful, unpleasant, things they don't want to happen to them. And so when we take our dogs out into the world, it's very natural and normal because of the way that dogs are genetically hardwired that the environment is extremely interesting, whether that's in a stressful or like a negatively stressful way or a really exciting positive way. And so it's not normal for our dogs to focus entirely on us and to want to be close to us. All of the value, as far as they're concerned, is out in the world. It's the squirrel running on the other side of the street, it's the kids playing in the yard, it's even just that little blade of grass that smells particularly interesting. And so if we want to teach our dogs that there is value in staying close, then we can do that literally all throughout the day. So my dogs earn their daily food ration through working and playing and working on games that build those particular skills like focus and like proximity through really simple games. And I'm going to show you one game toward the end of this live. That's just a really basic game in terms of building that focus and building value in proximity. So I determine what my loose leash walking bubble is. For my other dog who's a little bit more reactive, much smaller bubble, much more specific criteria. For Summer, who has a history of leash reactivity, but he's a pretty chill dude these days, he's almost 10, he has a lot more freedom when he goes for a walk, as long as he's not towing me down the street. So proximity looks different for each dog, depending on their needs. And we need to build those skills before we take our dogs for a walk. I do want to say really quick, the more your dog pulls, the more they will continue to pull. Pulling in itself is reinforcing, and I believe that it really escalates arousal levels and pays into this feedback mechanism, especially for reactive dogs. I would say most dogs that pull like a freight train are probably also pretty reactive, in my experience. By that I mean they overreact to particular stimuli in the environment. So the last skill that I think is super, super important for having a dog that walks nicely by your side is calmness. So if your dog isn't able to be calm and focus on you at home or in the yard, why would it make sense, or how is it logical to ask them to focus on you in the incredibly exciting neighborhood experience that to us might seem fairly calm, but to our dogs is full of sights and sounds and smells and is profoundly interesting and potentially stressful. So building calmness, and if you haven't watched my live on that, I did it about a month ago-ish. please check back. It's called Capturing Calmness, and there's some really good information in there in terms of what it looks like to foster a calm dog, like Summer's ability to chill here while my bird squawks in the other room, and some dogs bark over there, and he left his boundary to go potty, and then he came back, because that's where his value is in calmness and in his place. So if we don't have a dog who can be calm at home, then expecting them to be calm on a walk is unrealistic. So a focused dog, a dog who values proximity, and a dog who is capable of being calm in distracting environments, that is a dog that can walk loose leash, and you can enjoy your walk together. So I do want to say I am offering a class on this, and it starts next week. It's a 4-week class. There are auditing spots, and there are working spots, and we're going to start with the basics of how to build these concepts at home, and then how to take them out onto a walk. I'm just going to demonstrate. What are we looking at time-wise here? 5 minutes, perfect. I'm going to demonstrate a couple minutes of one of my favorite loose leash walking games that combines a few different concepts. I would say primarily it focuses on your dog being able to be connected to you and focus on you, and then also on proximity and deciding wherever you put the value, wherever you are intentional about placing value, that is where your dog is going to go. They will go wherever they have found reinforcement in the past, and for most dogs, that's at the end of the leash, as far away from their owner as they can be. Doesn't mean your dog doesn't love you, it's just natural, and that's how behavior works. So if we're intentional about building value where we want it, then we're going to get the behaviors that we want. So I'm going to demonstrate this with Summer. I'm going to move his boundary here. Just a really simple game that I call the Yellow Brick Road. I'm going to grab a handful of treats here. And my goal is that I want to teach Summer that it is really reinforcing to be right by my side. And when I start this with very, very young puppies. It's one of the first games that I would play when I get a dog. And I would play it in the house and in the yard, off leash, but you absolutely can play it on leash and build a ton of value in the game before you ever try to take it out on a walk. The calmer your dog is, the more likely they are to accept treats on a walk. So if you say that your dog is not treat motivated, and that's why you can't teach loose leash walking with positive reinforcement, it's because you move too quickly, nice, and your criteria is too high. Your dog is not ready for that kind of distraction. So it's a really simple game. I take a treat and drop it on the ground, and then I move away from my dog, and when he gets to me, yes, I mark and reward, move away, yes. And notice I'm marking the moment he gets to the spot that would be a nice loose leash walking proximity zone that I have decided for him. Yes. Yes. Good boy. Yes, good boy. So what's happening here is I'm giving my dog like 3 different opportunities to obtain reinforcement. One of the things that's happening is that my dog is learning repeatedly to come into this proximity zone. I'm not trying to keep him there. I'm not trying to feed him a whole bunch of times so he stays right here. I'm teaching him that entering that bubble from outside of it is where the value is. So he's the one who triggers the arrival of the marker and the food. By moving away from him, he gets to chase me, which is reinforcing for the vast majority of dogs. You probably have figured out that one of the best ways to get your dog to come to you is to run away from them. And he gets to sniff the food off the ground, which for a lot of dogs is reinforcing in and of itself. For high energy dogs, I'll start this game out with lots of quick movement, so my dog feels excited to enter that zone. Your timing needs to be good. You mark the moment they get to your side, or whatever you have decided is your loose leash walking spot, and then you place the treat on the ground to give you time to move away. You can imagine how this is relatively easy to adapt to an on-leash situation where you're actually walking down a sidewalk or maybe in a field or whatever, but I guarantee you that practicing it at home and being unpredictable in the way you move is how you build value for that spot. So this is just an example of the sort of stuff we'll be covering in my class. Would love to have you there and to help you solve your loose leash walking struggles with your dog. Again, my name is Lorena. This is Synergy Behavior Solutions. I'm gonna come over here and say hi. And this is Summer. He likes to demo sometimes. He's getting older. So give him lots of hearts and likes, please. Have a lovely day, and I hope to see you again soon.